Auto sequence start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So good afternoon and welcome to everyone who's joined us today. I hope you find this workshop really useful and informative. My name is Caroline Meehan. I'm the Northern Director for Federation of Master Builders. I manage around 1,600 SME building companies across the north of England, around 400 or 500 of those in the northeast. A large part of my role with the FMB is to work closely with regional committees, groups, colleges, aiming to align our members' needs and spread best practice through the industry. I've been a committee member with Construction Alliance Northeast for the past 3 years and was elected to Vice Chair early 2020. So Construction Alliance Northeast is a regional lobbying organisation. We're a collection of construction and engineering bodies representing over 500 member companies with a combined turnover of 3 billion and employing in excess of 100,000 people. Our main objective is to play a strategic role in ensuring that a fair share of public sector tender opportunities is made available to SME companies based in the Northeast. And we do this through lobbying, MPs, MEPs, local authorities and other procurement organisations. Operating in a sector which was badly affected throughout the recession, Ken has been born from a desire to support and promote the Northeast talented and highly skilled SME contractors at a time when many are missing out on work opportunities due to procurement methods. So you can find more on our work at constructionalliancenortheast.co.uk. And just really to take you back into today's session of digital evolution, working closely with small builders as I do, small and medium size, I do notice that some of them don't have any digital presence. Some members do have websites that were created many years ago and quite static and not really updated. Images, content, anything of relevance really to today. A few more have taken to social media and are posting quite regularly to promote their work, but maybe they just don't have all the tools that they need to really grow their businesses. So I hope that you take away from today's session the importance of evolving and having a strong digital presence for growing your business. Construction historically has fallen second bottom next to agriculture for digital evolution. So hoping that we can help change that today. Doesn't need to be too onerous. You don't need to be an expert. We've got the experts with us today. They can support your business growth. So do remember that Mediaworks are offering a free 30-minute virtual coffee that can delve a bit deeper into your own specific needs. So I hope you enjoyed today and I'll hand you back over to Brett.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. So very, very briefly, my name is Brett Jacobson. I'm CEO and founder of Mediaworks, who are a full-service digital agency headquartered out of Gateshead. We're across 4 locations, Yorkshire, Scotland and London, hopefully soon to be Dublin in Ireland, which is interesting. We've been established 14 years. We're just shy of 150 full-time heads. And we specialise in supporting clients across the housing and construction sectors and complementary sectors. I suppose today, as Caroline touched on, we want to talk about digital transformation, specifically with reference to the construction sector, and why evolution is so important to avoid extinction. One of the first areas, I suppose, just to set the scene, marketing has changed. Data at the moment, there's over 250 quintillion bytes of data being created every single day by consumers. And I don't know if Dan touches on it in his, but that's enough to cover the planet 5 times in pennies. So it's a lot of data, and a lot of this data, as well as first-party data, that'll be unique to you and your business and your customers and clients. So embracing that is really key. Technology is predicted to be over 75 billion connected devices by 2025. So no longer is it enough to just be engaging with somebody on a website or an app. It's about how you can engage across multi-device and multi-channel and effectively continue to have that conversation with your clients, your customers, your audience at every stage of that kind of user journey and purchase and funnel. Creativity, 3 seconds is all you get now to grab the attention of your future customers. So it's important to stand out from the crowd. And generally, that's never just your competitors or your direct competitors. You're competing for your consumers' attention across with every other brand that want their attention. So I suppose it's no longer just good enough to be better than your competitors. You've got to be as good as everybody else if you want to perceive the right reputation. And then finally, sort of strategy. There's forecast to be over $2 trillion per year being spent on digital transformation by 2023. So, if you're not thinking about this, you definitely should be, and we could probably guarantee your competitors definitely are. I suppose how that relates to the construction sector in particular. So from a transformation perspective, what we've seen is over 8 years in acceleration in just the last 12 months alone. So in terms of those are real references underneath there in pink writing, but we'll send around these later, but they're a bit small for me to read. But there's over 8 years of acceleration. So the sector is scaling and investing rapidly in digital. And as Caroline mentioned, a lot of that will have been down to COVID and the pandemic and being forced to sort of prioritize some of these digital initiatives that no doubt have been on the list for a while, but have now become really, really important. So it's important to keep up with your competitors in that respect. I think from a technology perspective, a recent study saw that almost 70% of B2B decision makers are going to be focusing on remote or self-digital serve for sales in 2021 and beyond. This is a trend we saw, quite dramatically across previous sectors such as utilities and probably a lot in the housing association world that we've done some work in recently, which is slightly complementary, where they're wanting to engage with their tenants on a more self-serve digital first basis to just improve efficiencies, costs, and just general digital experience for your customers, your tenants, your suppliers, your partners. Reputation is number one priority for marketing and commercial teams within the construction sector. We've all saw what's happened with the likes of the Grenfells and things like this that have really impacted on the reputation of certain industries and certain practices. And I think a lot of people now are valuing that digital footprint is generally the first place that a lot of people will Google your business or search for your brand. And if that reputation doesn't come up the right way, you probably never get the phone call that you're hoping to receive because it puts people off at the first mark. So protecting your reputation online is key. And then I think, the biggest one and the most exciting one for me is around performance, and that there's forecast to be over a 45% increase in B2B advertising spend across 2021. One of the highest projected increases, known on record, really, with construction and housing being a key part of that. So it's definitely changing, and it's definitely changing in the construction sector. In terms of that evolution or extinction sort of mindset, why is it really important to embrace change and avoid extinction? So this is a phenomenal stat we found a few months back of 90% of the Fortune 500 firms, so the biggest 500 businesses on the planet that existed, less than, one generation ago, 78 years ago, no longer exist because they failed to innovate. A few of those sort of notable brands that most of us will remember, Compaq, Borders, Kodak, Blockbuster, Toys R Us. Kodak notoriously didn't want to affect their film business, so ignored digital cameras, and that didn't help them. Toys R Us were famously taken out by Amazon, who they supplied for many years before Amazon cut them out the loop and went direct. And then Blockbuster, were offered to buy a small firm called Netflix in 2005, but they didn't believe it was a great concept. Blockbuster don't exist, and Netflix is now worth, I think, circa 10 billion. So these are firms, these were the biggest 500 firms on the planet. And like I say, 90% of them don't exist within one generation because they failed to evolve and to innovate. On the flip side of that, the brands who did evolve and who have embraced change. So 2 examples on the left, Airbnb and Uber. Neither of these concepts are, new age concepts. Airbnb, the process of renting a room to a stranger in your building or home, whatever that might be, has happened since the dark ages. but these guys decided to put it in an app and harness technology and data and are now worth 100 billion. Uber, the process of giving a stranger a lift in your vehicle for a fare happened with horse and carts. So again, this isn't a new concept, but again, these guys took that, embraced technology, utilized the data that was available to them, and are also worth 100 billion market cap at the time we prepared this. Neither of those businesses own a single physical asset, and they're worth collectively $200 billion. So, technology, data, innovation, it's absolutely essential to be leveraging that. And just to further reiterate that, 5 out of the largest 5 businesses in the world today are technology-based, built on innovation and data, and on average around 20 years old across Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Tesla. So it's absolutely critical that you do begin to embrace digital and you do begin to put the focus on it that, again, Caroline mentioned, the organization striving to support members with. In terms of our approach to that, so, we see 4 key areas that we work with clients and help them leverage to help them own their future and drive performance beyond today. A lot of the biggest businesses that have come crashing down have relied on today's performance and not thought about tomorrow's. So, for us, data, technology, creativity, and strategy, those are 4 key ingredients to drive that performance. And those are the 4 areas for us as a digital agency of the future, we want to support our clients to embrace. And generally across that future and that journey, depending on kind of where you're at in that process, you'll have different obstacles to overcome. So, you might be right at the start of this process, having not really begun your digital journey yet or that investment. And that could be a huge transformation project where, first and foremost, it's about understanding your customer, understanding the data that you have got internally, your first party data, your third party data, doing that, real qualitative and quantitative research part to almost set the plan and set the journey and create that business strategy and the roadmap. Moving forwards to 3 specific areas that, again, the guys are going to talk about today in each of their different areas of the presentation. To brand. So, how are you positioning yourself as a brand? What's your language? Where are you positioning yourself in the market? How are you speaking to your audience, your customers, your clients? To experience, once you do engage with them, what is that experience like? Is it a really bad experience that's forcing people to not want to engage with you again? And how important a first class kind of digital first experience is going to be to the future, right through to then marketing. How are you targeting your customers of the future? How are you engaging with your current customers? Prospects, tenants, suppliers, partners, and how can you leverage some of those digital platforms and the kind of hyper target metrics they have to just really hone in and maximize your return from any of that digital investment. I suppose in terms of our previous missions and we're currently working with a lot of businesses I mentioned earlier in this sector. So we're a partner with Construction Alliance. We've been working with the likes of Esh Group for about the last 4 or 5 years on their digital journey, looking after their website rebuild. They're now into the app, the PR, the marketing, the digital marketing. People like Applebridge that Dan will touch on, how we helped develop their app and drive efficiencies inside their business through digital. St. Modwin's Homes, how we've been targeting different house build projects with specific types of people that we think are going to acquire those homes and how we've been targeting them through Facebook, LinkedIn, Google search. Also the likes of Mobile Mini, Dove Building Materials, Bottles PLC. So businesses who are also supporting that construction sector and how we've leveraged our experience there and what we've learned from those businesses to help kind of accelerate future clients in the construction sector. And a lot of the sort of value for that comes from some of the work we do in other sectors. So, we don't just work within the construction sector. It's a big focus of ours, but we also work across retail, pharma, healthcare, utilities. And I suppose those sectors that are a little bit further up the journey in terms of that digital investment curve, those kind of learnings that we've got from there, we can kind of apply to these new projects we get within the construction sector and also those construction examples so that we can really accelerate that journey. And we've learned the lessons, hopefully, that we don't want to have to apply to latter clients. In terms of today, the agenda, whoop, that was a double click. No, it wasn't. The agenda for today is going to be split into 4 sections. The guys are going to have about 10 minutes each. So Dan, our Chief Technology Officer, is going to talk about that transformation data piece. Paul's going to talk about, Paul's our managing partner at our Leeds office. He's going to be talking about brand. Andy's our creative director, oversees all of our design, development, webs and app projects. He's going to be talking about the experience piece. And then David's our performance marketing director. He's going to be talking about that marketing targeting piece of how you're going to drive sales, leads and inquiries. And then, as Caroline mentioned and Jason touched on, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you have got any questions, put them in the Q&A facility or the chat facility, and we'll pick those up and we'll get to those at the end. And that is my bit over. Dan, I will hand over to yourself to take it forward.
Okay, change mine. I've requested control, so should be able to change. There we go. Cool. So, transformation. So thanks, Brett. I will go on. So I should say, from a transformation point of view, I kind of really just wanted to start with a bit more of an overview in terms of what we mean by transformation. So I guess the key bit is, we've gone through a period of, rapid pace of technology change, innovation, and we as users have really evolved and all of our behaviors have changed, which has really put a spotlight on the need for digital transformation. And we've really seen over the last 12 months this accelerated change. But ultimately, the changes come from, as we say, technology and innovation. Things like the smartphones that we've got in our pockets that can record 4K videos, send and receive data faster than the home connections. We've got smartwatches that we've got on our wrists that can measure heart rates and track daily activity. And what this has really meant is that everyone is got this expectations that businesses interact in a specific type of way. And actually, there's a lot of traditional businesses, whether they operate in B2C and B2B, and that can be in construction, that there's just this expectation that organizations need to transform. And that's where this notion of digital transformations come from. But the problem is that it's not easy. And the key bit is that it's not easy for a reason. And the reason it's not easy is that today that consumers are much more complicated than they've ever been. Previously we were a lot more linear as people. Before technology and digital came along, we would kind of see stuff and we'd have traditional advertising, but now it's so complicated and we jump between brands, we jump across channels, we travel a lot more frequently and to a lot more different places. And actually it means that things are a lot more messy for businesses. And really what that means is, from a perspective of brands as businesses, that the landscape is so much more different. And just to give you that perspective from a marketing point of view, this is the marketing landscape. And 9 years ago, we were looking at vendors of about 150 different vendors. Fast forward to 2020, 2021, we're looking at 8,000 different vendors just in marketing. And what that really means is that, just as marketers, we're in such a complicated place where people have so many different things that they've got to look at. So from that point of view, the sheer scale of digital change is hard for people to look at. And as Caroline mentioned before, a lot of the construction businesses don't even have a digital presence right now. So when you're looking to transform, it's like, where do you get started? There's businesses that do have a digital presence now that don't know how to transform. So coming from a place where you don't have a digital presence is really hard to understand how to get started. And, there's large brands out there, there's Facebook, there's Amazon, Tesla, that inherently have innovation and change weaved into their DNA. But traditional organizations aren't like that. So it's really hard to understand what the first steps are to drive that transformational change. So the key bit really for driving the power from digital transformation is, understanding what you need to do and having a clear differentiation. But really, digital transformation shouldn't be viewed as a complicated concept. It's really just about understanding where you can drive business value through digital technology and defining that. And then the clear bit to do next, and the hardest part really, is to work and to understand where that value comes from along that roadmap. Whether it's at the beginning phases of interacting with potential new clients, or whether it's, working with contractors or stakeholders along the way, or whether it is the acquisition of people along that journey in terms of, new customers or acquisition. So the key bit there really is to work the initial phases. And for us with clients at the beginning of transformation is, what do we need to do for transformational change and understanding that journey? So as Brett mentioned earlier, One of the advantages we've actually got is that we live in a world now where we've got huge amounts of data. And as we said, there's 2.5 quintillion bytes of data produced every day. So as Brett said, if each byte of data was a penny, we could go around the world 5 times every day with the amount of pennies collected. But really, the size of data isn't the valuable piece there. And actually, the piece of information that's most valuable now, and the things that global CEOs see as valuable, is that this data actually gives you a huge amount of information about how people interact. And what people are doing there is using this data to say, okay, as part of this business journey, what can we understand and what can we see as valuable about how our customers or our stakeholders are interacting with us, and how can we use digital to try and drive efficiencies or cost savings across the business. So really, data and insight is important. So where we can collect, combine, and understand the stakeholder data, it's never been more important. So using this data and harnessing it with technology really allows us to drive this data-first approach to really define this difference between evolution or extinction. And I think from this point of view, whether it's from a brand, an experience, or a marketing perspective, which Paul, Andy, and David will touch on shortly, you can really use this to understand how digital will help you drive forward the areas of the business where you'll see most change. As Brett said, the key bit we look at with clients is really to understand the business and where can we drive the most value through digital transformation. And it really is different by every type of business. You've all got different challenges, and everyone is in a different place, and everyone has a different part across the kind of maturity model. There's some businesses that are really mature in terms of that digital piece, and other businesses really are at the start of the journey. And our role really is to help you along that piece. And with Applebridge, we've partnered to really look at that from a workflow perspective and to understand, where does digital have that most value? And the key bit we really looked at there was, how do we develop a project management tool and an app that could really help them drive a centralized view of their projects? And I think the key bit there really was that, there was a lot of paper trails. There was a lot of stuff that was happening offline that would allow, different things where there was different contractors and a lot of different people coming in to do different jobs. That meant potentially there was, cracks in the way that these would happen, that, different jobs would get done or things wouldn't get finished. That meant, there was delays. Actually, it was say, okay, how can we prioritize things? How can we make sure there's cost savings? And how can we make smarter decisions about jobs and make sure that things get flagged for prioritization? And actually, we use digital to create a portal that allows us to govern all of this and create activity. And this isn't, using digital to change the process that happens in the background. It just uses digital to make things more efficient and allows for this to be centralized in one place. I think this is the key bit where, people see digital transformation either as something that comes in and takes away from stuff that happens in the past. It's really just about using this as a new tool to make things more effective or do things in a more efficient way to what happened in the past. So from Applebridge's perspective, it was to create this, transforming workflow practice and create a hub that allowed, projects to go in and gave you more information around statuses, breakdowns of projects, and understand, what was open, what tasks were around certain projects, and really give key information and documentation in a central hub. So the key there was, as I say, to understand value at key parts of a business and use digital as an effective tool to do that. So really, to summarize for me, digital transformation isn't a complicated concept. It's just about understanding within your business where could digital drive efficiencies or cost savings and using it to really improve. And that data and technology sit together. And they can be used to drive that transformation within your business. And it's not about taking away stuff that is already there. It's just about starting on that journey. And as I say, every business is different, and we really can help you from that start of the journey, no matter where you are in that maturity model. I'll pass across to you, Paul.
Right, thank you very much, Dan. And so what I wanted to talk about next is about brand. And I think you might think this is the kind of fluffy side of things, but actually, when we stop and think, the world of construction is full of brands. So, big civil engineering companies, property developers, household names, big international global companies, but also local builders, people in the supply chain, building supplies, all these kind of things. And I was just thinking, like, one of the first websites I ever built back in the 90s, back in the day, was for Rugby Group, who were a massive PLC that was all about rugby cement and all these kind of things. So construction has been doing digital, but I think there's kind of a lot of legacy of yellow pages and all these kind of things. Certainly, as you get into smaller businesses and SMEs, that really that time has gone. And like Brett said, this digital transformation has been condensed, and it's time to fully embrace this. So the role of brand. What are we talking about here? Well, brand strength. You can see it there in those three logos: Airbnb, Uber, and Apple. You know them as a brand. You know what they stand for. And actually, there's no surprise that the most disruptive companies, the biggest companies, have got very strong, well-known names, identities, and you know what they stand for. But more importantly than that, the chart there is just showing the difference between companies that invest in their brands and companies that don't when you're going through a recession. So this was going through the recession in 2008, at the end of the 2000s, and companies companies that invest in their brand massively outperform companies that don't. So what I'm just going to cover now is kind of three different ways that we look at brands, so and how we get under the skin of how to solve problems and how to create really good results. So we're going to talk about insight and strategy. We're going to talk about creative development, and we're going to talk a little bit about campaigns. So I think the first thing when we talk about insight and strategy is kind of understanding really how brands work. And there's been a lot of science gone into this, a lot of research, and actually it comes down to two very simple things about a brand and why people buy things. People buy things because they're easy to buy. And, in this model, it's called physical availability. Is it easy to buy the product, the service, whatever it is? And then the second part is about mental availability. And this is really where we come into brands. Do people feel predisposed to want to work with you? Have they got an image in their head about what it is that you're doing, what you're selling, the values that you have, and what's kind of baked into your business offering and your services? So by looking at this kind of mental availability side, we can then start to look at what your proposition is as a business, the words that you use in your advertising, how you describe yourselves, your tone of voice. And then that starts to create this kind of mental picture, mental image amongst your prospects and your customers, and will make them more likely to buy from you. We can get into some really interesting bits of data on that. And this is the kind of work that we do, that for any one of our clients, we'll go really look into kind of things like search data here. And you might think that actually the most persuasive word that you could use is cheap, because people will buy things that are inexpensive. You want to beat the competition on price. But actually, when we look at Google Trends over the last few years, you actually see that there's more people using the word best than the word cheap. So actually, you should always be thinking about, is there another angle? Is it about quality? Is it about speed? Is it about customer service? And those are the kind of things that we start to think about with a brand. You'd be amazed at the amount of insight and data that we can get into audiences. We subscribe to a tool called YouGov. You might have heard it on the radio or on the news sometimes. It's a big kind of survey of what people do. And what I did here was just pull out an audience of people who work in the construction sector, and they're senior decision makers. They're the people that are going to be buying products and services. And just for that one group, we can then say, okay, where do these people hang out? Where if we wanted to advertise to them, where would be the best place to do that? So we can see that actually print magazines is a really good place to advertise to this audience. But then we can also do things like, are they on social media, and what social networks are they on? And, unsurprisingly, they're all on Facebook, but actually they over-index, i.e. they're more likely to be on LinkedIn as well. So we can immediately see those two really good channels that we could use. And then the brilliant thing is that you go into LinkedIn and you can just identify an audience and advertise to them. And that's the kind of thing that David will come on to talk about. So we use all of this insight then to start pulling together a kind of ecosystem, so we can start understanding the different channels that we need to be in, whether it's social media, whether it's in press advertising, radio advertising. We can start to say, okay, we might need a website, other elements, and we kind of start to say, you actually pull all that together, and you're starting to create a brand experience. And Andy will come on and talk more about that. But actually, we're using all of this insight and all of this data to actually quantify where we need to be. And then when we actually do the activity, we've got a pretty good idea that it's going to work. Okay, so having looked at kind of, the theory behind all this, starting to think about how we develop propositions around quality and those kind of things, and the kind of environment, ecosystem, as we call it, that we need to design for, we then need to start talking about creative. And this can often be quite challenging to kind of get into. But what we really mean by the creative side of this is understanding that actually the role of our advertising is to create emotional impact. And, we know that emotional campaigns, you'll know that advertising that makes you feel something stays with you more. And actually it delivers much kind of better profit effects as well. A very easy way to understand how to look at adverts and how they're kind of put together. This is a little model that we stole from Google. My slide won't advance. Oh no, crash the punchline. Okay, so we have this model from Google where they talk about A plus B plus C over V, and really in an advert, I think the B is the easy bit, the benefit. What's the benefit of your product or service? Then what you need to do is to kind of make your advertising culturally relevant. You don't want to look an old-fashioned company; you want to look relevant, and then you'll all know that advertising that then has something unusual about it. The A, the abnormal, is going to be something that you remember. So abnormal, something that is unusual, communicate the benefit and be culturally relevant is really important. And then the thing that you need to avoid is the V, which is for the vampire. And you want to avoid vampires in your advertising. And what we mean by vampires is anything that's going to jar, anything that's going to kind of be a disconnect or discordant. It's bad music, bad acting, cheesy stock photography, poor quality production of your logos, your photography. And you can do all the planning in the world, and then you execute it badly, and your advertising won't work, and it could damage your brand. Okay, now I think just the last part of this is about talking about campaigns, and I think it's really important because I think a lot of people will focus on short-term campaigns, so driving sales, that kind of thing, driving leads. But actually, what tends to happen then is you get big spikes, but actually overall your business might not grow up in value. Whereas the value of investing in your brand means that actually it goes more of this ladder kind of stairs effect. So over time, your brand value will increase the impact of your sales, short-term sales driving. So we'd always recommend that you kind of think about two sides to advertising, that you do brand building, but you also do this sales driving. And just very quickly to finish, just the kind of evidence that sits around this. Reputation, as we've already said, is a really important part of your brand. And actually, when we look across Trustpilot, and I just picked housing developers as an example here, and we see Bloor houses absolutely coming in at the top of the list. And then we go and look at actually the performance of all the different housing developers in the UK. And we actually see on the right here that Bloor Housing are outperforming their revenue versus how famous they are. That's basically what this graph is telling us. But conversely, on the other side of things, we can see that Miller Homes are underperforming. Their revenue is underperforming against how famous they are. And just to finally show you then how you bring all this together, this is an example from some work that we did with Miller Homes, where we said, do you know what? Actually, it's your brand that's letting you down. You're quite well known, but this brand experience just isn't really delivering. And you go from a really functional, run-of-the-mill, tired-looking ad into something that's aspirational, it's simple, it's creative, it's clear, it screams premium quality. And that's the kind of thing that we would then be taking to transform the brand image of someone within the construction sector. So that is a very quick whistle-stop tour of the value of branding. And, it's about driving performance across the whole of your universe. And, the disruptive brands that we talked about know this, and they use it to their advantage. So I'll hand over to Andy.
Brilliant. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to talk a little bit around kind of experiences and how we design and build a better future by kind of looking at websites, thinking about what platforms and how kind of customers, prospective customers, existing customers actually engage with us, how they want to engage with us in the kind of, I suppose, in today's world. So, it's been mentioned a few times, but, the demand for digital experiences is kind of far bigger and greater than it's ever been. And actually, this kind of digital revolution is changing the way that we operate as businesses internally, which Dan's alluded to. We're looking at ways to be more efficient, drive better quality internally as a business, use digital to communicate with our workforce and our employees and keep them engaged. But also, consumers and potential customers are kind of, I suppose, demanding from us as businesses digital channels, digital experiences to engage with on a day-to-day basis. A lot of this shift and this change is being driven, obviously, we're talking about the construction sector in particular here, but, this demand for digital and this kind of desire for change is being driven in everyday life. Obviously, during the pandemic, there were certain, I suppose, sectors and certain organizations that were kind of looking to go online to survive. We had local independent markets that were using digital as the only channel to engage. We had kind of, I suppose, families and an older demographic using conference calls like Zoom to engage with family members that were, they hadn't seen for weeks. And then you also had organizations that were being forced to digital channels just to deal with demand. So digital is becoming more and more apparent, but this drive and this expectation from end consumers is being driven by people out of our sector. In their everyday life, they're experiencing digital. So we have a job really to kind of open up our business and our channels using digital and actually almost making sure that we're visible for customers or consumers in a way that they search and when they want to engage with us. How we go about embracing the change, Brett touched on it before, the kind of the philosophy of using data. So how can we understand who should we be engaging with? How should we be engaging with them? Paul's touched a little bit on being creative and, making sure that our brand purpose is coming through and our values are being communicated, our USPs are being presented in a way that is better than our competitors, that makes us resonate with our audience in a way that we should do. And then technology also plays a huge part. As technology devices, social platforms evolve, then there's more opportunity for us to go out there and have a presence. And, Paul touched on this idea of yellow pages. And, it used to be a way to find kind of products or services, word of mouth, everything, great ways to discover new companies and brands. But, websites and the internet are essentially often, a lot of the time your first touch point, and first impressions mean a big thing. So actually that first touch point could be where you lose a potential customer if you're not there, if you're not creative, if you aren't on the right channel at the right time, if you aren't relevant, if you haven't got content that's up to date. So actually it's really important that we're putting these digital channels and experiences at the forefront of our strategy, because they're often the place where a relationship can start, and actually these channels are also kind of, I suppose, channels that will play a huge part in the long-term relationship. A conversion point of a sale or lead might take months, and they might keep coming back and checking out and visiting you. So actually that experience, that digital channel needs to be, as best as it can be for the entire journey of engaging with customers. So just as a bit of an, we talk an awful lot around, okay, use data. We've got access to lots of data, but how can data actually help improve our experiences? So I've got a few kind of just ideas here and a few takeaways. So, everything that we do from a digital perspective should be targeted and tailored towards our audience. Every single customer, no matter where we are, whatever sector, they'll want different things from us as an organization. So we need to spend time understanding what it is they want from us. So we could use data points from third parties, as Paul touched upon before in GWI. Where are our customers? What social channels do they use? How do they explore and discover new businesses and new companies that like to work with? Where are we looking to, get new subcontractors? How can we, position ourselves as a main contractor? We need to find out how customers where they hang out and where we should be active. So we can use third party to get a good insight into our audience. Then we look at kind of search data. So we use Google an awful lot. There's a lot. Google is probably the most unbiased data set you'll ever come across. There's thousands and millions of questions asked of Google every single day. So actually, when we talk about creating relevant content within our sector to appear like a thought leader, to position ourselves as an expert in a particular field, using search data and looking at the questions and the conversations that are being had around your product, your service, your sector, your market is a brilliant way to look at what kind of content you should be creating. So if we are going to create some social content, how do we make sure it's relevant? We look at what conversations are being had out there in our market. We kind of, Caroline had touched on, we do have a lot of, businesses have got websites. The internet isn't new. People have really old websites. Some people have been investing in websites and we're on second, third websites. But actually, the analytics and the data that your website can give you is a great indication of what works. So we can dig into that data. And if we're looking at what, we want to start using our case studies in our sales collateral. Well, actually, let's use that data to look at what is the most engaged case study. What is the most popular one that drives conversion? Because that would be the one that we would put more emphasis on, we would use in our marketing. What imagery is actually working best? Is video the best way to display our case studies? Or is it actually just a gallery of befores, afters, project updates? Is it the kind of the CSR content and the fantastic work that we do in the community that really drives engagement? Because all of that insight should shape the content that we create and almost then what we build our digital experience around. And then finally, and this is, I suppose, where we start to be really, really clever. And it's actually looking at your own customers and your own first party data to understand, well, actually, who are the customers that we want to be engaging with, and profiling those guys, because actually we want to put all of our efforts and all of our marketing activity onto our target customers. So we use the people that are the most profitable, that give us the kind of the work that we want. We have a very kind of specific pot of prospects and targets that we want to go after. That's who we should profile, because we want to be engaging with those guys. And then when it comes to creating an experience, it's about, how do we then build a web presence that is optimized for mobile, but that is tailored to each individual audience. So if we are looking to, talk to a house builder, or we want to win a particular contract, well, how do we make sure that when we're building an experience, it's providing all of the right things in terms of, trust, case studies to reference, I suppose thought leadership content that puts us as an authority in a particular space. So it's about personalizing that content experience to each individual audience to drive the right kind of behavior. Technology is playing a huge part. So, Brett and Dan have alluded to it. There are lots of different ways and lots of kind of, innovations within technology that can help improve our digital offering based on our audience. So we've got more mobile devices out there than ever before. We've got the use of tablets. We've got, laptops, desktops, social platforms. So there's so many different ways that we can actually build experiences to engage with our audiences. And I think it's only getting bigger. And what I mean by that is, mobile usage is set to increase from 2 hours a day to 3 hours in 2021. So people are spending more and more time on the mobile device, actually. So B2B search queries via mobile are also, expected to grow significantly this year. And I know that we kind of talk about, the internet and digital being the first touch point of where people discover new services. So it's really important that we are optimized and visible, because actually 60% of mobile users have contacted companies directly using a search result. So all of this activity tends to start online through search. So as an organization, we need to be optimized and in front of our customers there. And then finally, social media, which is something you always talk about in the B2B world. Is it a channel that is actually, is going to add value? And it absolutely is. People say that social media is the most effective market method behind search engine optimization in B2B marketing. And that came through from where is it gone? The sources actually left head, I've got it, HubSpot, and it's HubSpot marketeers that are all investing in social channels as being a huge driver of kind of customer acquisition. So, let's not dismiss it, let's embrace it. And I think what I always think about from using social in a B2B world is, our customers, our end consumers are human. They're using these channels in their day-to-day, every single day, contributing, publishing content. So it's a huge opportunity to get in front of them as a brand and an organization. And finally, what I wanted to kind of cover off is, a lot of what we are talking about today, guys, to be honest, is very much about having a vision of how digital can improve your business and help and support that growth that Caroline touched upon. There is a huge opportunity for growth if we do embrace digital and take a minute, I suppose, to realize what is possible and how can digital help transform me as an organization. But what we don't want to do, and it kind of gets back to what Dan was saying earlier, as it shouldn't be difficult or scary or complicated. We have that very, I suppose, forward-thinking strategic vision of where we can be and how digital can support that growth. But it's really important to break that down into very short-term projects, where we can get out and start being active on these digital channels, start improving our on-site experience, start introducing new social channels, to start testing, learning, and start to drive value through the business, through digital, as early as possible. Because it's one thing that we're trying to, highlight, and Brett did a very good job at that beginning, is digital is now. We are talking about being very future thinking, but digital engagement and the way that brands are using it and where the business are using it to grow is happening right now. So it's actually about having that long-term vision, but having a very kind of rigid plan as how we can start using it tomorrow. So just kind of a little bit of a case study to follow off on. So Brett touched on it early on. We have worked with Esh for many years now, and we're actually on website number 2 with Esh, because the first job that we did with Esh was about consolidating all of their sub-brands into one larger site that allowed us to communicate the entire Esh brands offering under one umbrella brand. And what we did is we migrated all of that content into one platform. What that allowed us to do is to be very service driven, as opposed to looking at just very specific brands that were operating in very specific regions. And we were able to kind of position ourselves as experts and as definitely leaders within the disciplines in which they operated. So that this was a huge project for Esh. And, a lot of it was about bringing in their brand values, as Paul's touched on, what makes Esh brilliant, the effort they put into the work that they do out in the community, and how do we leverage that and put it at the forefront of all of our kind of communication channels when you hit the website, when you hit their social channels. And all of that was about building this, I suppose, complete infrastructure. No matter where you touched Esh, it kind of was aligned with their brand values, what was great, and actually showcased it in a way that could be accessed by mobile, via desktop, and actually really supported their new business activity and how they were going out to look and support within bids or tender opportunities that they were going for. The results off the back of the website were pretty phenomenal. So there was an 887% increase in SEO visibility. So what I mean by here, through optimizing the website, looking at search behavior, what were people searching for? How could we ensure that Esh were visible so that we were positioned number 1 to start driving, engagement and, I suppose, new business from the website. So we've seen a huge increase by migrating all of those websites onto one. We've seen a huge increase in time spent on site, and a lot of that was the kind of content that we were creating. So we were using imagery more. We were trying to put video in there as much as possible. The content didn't need to be War and Peace. It was short, it was concise, it talked about all of the kind of values that we knew people were looking for from the business, efficiency, cost savings, or working in the community. So it's about creating content that was really relevant for us, for our audiences. And then finally, 80% increase in page views. And that's down to how we architected the website in terms of making sure that we never had dead ends. On every single page, there was always a next step. The website was built and designed to take people, from awareness of who we are as a brand through to kind of giving case studies as we're going through consideration, referenceability, position ourselves as an expert in the field, right the way down to decision, where we were looking to convert customers online, because actually, people will convert online, they will submit inquiry forms, and digital is definitely a channel that can support, new customer acquisition and help support bids and tenders. So in terms of, in summary, what we do need to remember is that, customer behaviors are changing. We're speaking very much of the way that digital plays a part now, but it will continue to evolve. Digital is kind of never done. It's playing a huge part in the way we operate as organizations now, but that's only going to get, more and more important, that we're ensuring that, digital is sat at the heart of everything that we do. And it's going to help us grow our businesses. It's going to help, improve the way we engage with our staff and employees and partners on frameworks and etc. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Andy. I think from my perspective, I'm going to talk today about sort of marketing and how you attract and convert to fuel future growth. I think from sort of our perspective, when it comes to marketing, the mission's about sort of maximising your visibility, customer acquisition and revenue to own your future and drive performance beyond today. I think a massive major part of that is about understanding what the overall goal is. So I think that, what you'll hear when we talk about different sort of channels and different metrics, and we've done it today in this presentation, we've talked about increase in clicks here, and we've talked about increase in time on site. But I think from our perspective, marketing's all about how it contributes to achieving that company-wide strategy and the overall goal. So when it comes to marketing opportunities, this is one of the slides that we like to show, and I think it's a really important piece of information, really, because I think that the reality is that for a lot of businesses right now, one of the biggest challenges out there is that actually it's quite overwhelming. And the digital landscape, as Dan highlighted, has changed incredibly over the last decade, and we've seen a massive amount of growth. Brett highlighted at the beginning, 8 years in the last 18 months, etc. So the number of channels that are available to you as a business in terms of selecting, how you get to market, your route to market, how you engage with your audience, have never been so available, if you like, or there's never been so laid. So I guess the sort of, for me, where I always want to start is, we've talked about it throughout this whole presentation. It's very much a data-driven approach that we would be advocating anybody takes. Be thinking about what data have you got, what has driven performance in the past, is there any external reference points, i.e. what are your competitors doing, what are the industry norms for your organisation and the industry which you operate in. So as you can see, once you've got those factors, you can focus on a multitude of channels. And we're not going to talk about all these in any depth today. We deliver digital masterclasses on a weekly basis. If you want to find out a bit more about each of those areas and topics, we cover these in hour-long sessions on a weekly basis. But you've got SEO, the focus of off-site, on-site technical, so those really organic search results and the impact that they can have. You've then got PR and reputation. Brett mentioned at the beginning that the role of PR and its impact on sort of, construction, housing-based businesses, etc., is significant because people are heavily invested in those sectors. Then you've got media planning and buy-in, so publications, TV, radio, etc. Moving right round to content, so focusing on the content that you're producing. So, Andy touched on that when he talked about ESH, so whether it be video content, whether it be written content, whether it be blog posts, etc. It's all about understanding, that you've got to focus that on a particular user or user group or audience or customer profile, etc. Right through to sort of paid advertising, which is the area that my day focuses on most at Mediaworks. I guess the reason that this is complex, though, is that we know that online consumer touchpoints range between 220 to 500, depending on purchase. So when Dan mentioned right at the beginning, that used to be quite a linear model. It's not a linear model anymore. I would say it's more like snakes and ladders, where consumers go partway through the journey, then step back up into the awareness stage and then research, etc. again, and then go back into that conversion piece. So I think that you've got to have a clear understanding about what each channel that you're focusing on or what each marketing activity you focus on can really deliver. I think one of the things that I've seen, working sort of digital for over 10 years, is that sometimes people come at this from very much we want to run a particular campaign, or our competitors on Facebook, so we want to do Facebook, etc. We never ever take that approach at Mediaworks. For us, it's about understanding the customer and then building a campaign that meets their needs based on a full understanding of the user journey, as Paul highlighted in his section earlier on. On the next slide, anyway, what we talk about, I'll just go into it, is we talk about that customer journey, and the reality is it did used to be this linear funnel that you saw. So it very much focused on awareness at the top, conversion, consideration, and then advocacy at the bottom. I think what we've seen is that there's that sort of consideration piece, there is that trigger now, but ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to pull people through for them to really understand the customer journey, because there is that piece where people do want to explore, people do want to understand and find out a bit more information, especially with the increased level of competition that we're seeing out there. I think that what we've talked about today is using that data piece, that technology piece, that creativity and strategy piece, is that really what we focused on is we would use those as the anchor to really drive your navigation, so to really help understand the points between the trigger and the conversion. On the next slide, what we've got is we've got a case study. We've got a case study from Mobile Mini. St. Modwin's first. So St. Modwin's is very much a B2C focused house builder. They're a FTSE 250 business running 21 sites, and they're split between Midland, South East and London, South Western Wales and the North and the North West. We worked with St. Modwin's to ultimately improve performance, increase volume and quality of leads, and lower what we call the cost per acquisition. How we did that then was we ran really hyper-targeted, localized campaigns. So really understanding the user, really understanding the different motivations and reasons for people engaging on, through different channels, and what their motivations were for purchasing a house. So whether that be a first-time buyer, or whether it be, family-based unit more type decision for those more sort of extravagant, more expensive purchases. The results, frankly, were staggering. We ran campaigns across Facebook, Instagram, and paid search predominantly. We saw a 128% increase in conversions year on year. We saw a 20% reduction in customer acquisition and cost. And ultimately what this led to was 3 record-breaking months back to back. We worked very, very closely with their sales team. So they were really feeding back to us quite a lot around that data in terms of giving us the insight into, we use customer ID tracking, where we understood exactly what channel and what campaign and what messaging and what content had delivered the strongest results. So that really is a really good example of how we can run really targeted campaigns through the various platforms. On the next example, then, we've got Mobile Mini. And Mobile Mini came to us with really a remit to focus on, Mobile Mini are the leading national provider of portable site accommodation and secure storage containers. Their focus, reading everything that's on screen, was actually about how they could really improve their brand position, but with a real focus on container hire rather than container sales. Now, again, what we did for these was we focused on organic search engine optimization, paid search through the likes of Google and Bing, also LinkedIn from a B2B perspective, and also conversion rate optimization. The results that we saw, again, were incredibly strong in terms of we saw a 266% increase in new business paid conversions. And that was despite spending more. So we spent more money, but also the level of efficiency that we were able to achieve was incredible in terms of an 84% reduction in customer acquisition costs, which ultimately meant what we were doing was we were spending more money, but still getting leads at a cheaper rate, which for any business is a really good sort of yardstick, particularly in a B2B space where we've typically, especially over the last 18 months in the construction sector, we've seen increasing costs in this space. So to achieve those results meant we were really focusing, really understood the audience that we were going after. What that then drove was increased on-site conversion. We were driving better traffic towards the website. That meant when they were on-site, they converted at a better rate. And that was through our conversion rate optimization team, looking at how the user experiences that whole customer journey from point of first interaction with your business right through to actually picking up the phone or putting in an email to inquire about, one of these containers. I think from my perspective, then, the final point I want to make, I appreciate we're short on time, is really around consumer behaviours aren't fixed and your marketing approach shouldn't be either. In the different examples I've highlighted there, I've talked about the fact that we've used multiple channels to achieve multiple sort of objectives, but ultimately all with a big objective in mind. And I think that's the reality, is you've got an incredible amount of choice in front of you. And if Mediaworks and it can help you in that navigation, in the customer journey piece, then we'd be delighted to support you with that, because it is a real challenge. It is complex. With a wealth of channels available, strategy and creativity alongside harnessing data and technology will be the key factors in achieving performance and cut through.
Great stuff. Thank you, David. It's worth saying as well, just before we wrap up your talk, I do recall Mobile Mini had to reduce their budget because they were getting so many leads they couldn't deal with them. Just putting that one in there. If we can do that in a very traditional industry, with a market-leading brand and drive real conversions turning into real money, then, like you say, it should hopefully give testament to everyone on the call that it's a space that you need to be thinking about. Thanks to all the speakers. I thought you did fantastic well, and thanks to Caroline. I think we've got time for some questions. And Caroline, I think we had a couple come in kind of ahead of the session from a couple of members.
Yeah, just thanks everyone. Really interesting stuff there. Really interesting to see Facebook and Instagram as the top two in construction. And I appreciate for some members that I can see that are on this workshop that some of that talk was slightly high end. It's not really their normal talk. But I think one thing that I took away from this that I could just say is that we have a problem in the industry of cowboy builders, and it's a really big challenge for us to tackle that. And I see, growing your digital presence and your engagement with clients as one way to really overcome your reputation and to create that transparency and those relationships. You're not going to get cowboy builders developing social media platforms and being contactable in that way. So one really good sort of reason why I would encourage members to really think about a digital profile and look how they could maybe work with you in growing that. But just on that, a couple of questions that I did have. So what is the importance of digital for construction businesses when the focus in the past has been more traditional?
I mean, from my perspective, Caroline, I think you probably hit the nail on the head just before you asked that question. I think the reputation piece is absolutely critical. And I know my brother's just set up a small construction business, and he's advertising online and he's targeting certain postcodes, and he's investing in Google reviews and Trustpilot reviews already, because he's a 5-person business doing 100K type refurbs and projects. And he values that digital reputation already. So he's already investing ahead of probably some businesses that maybe have 500 staff and 20 or 30 million turnover. So I think the reputation thing for me would, as you've just alluded to there, would be an absolute first port of call, and why it's so important for people to embrace it. And I think people probably haven't been investing for years in that offline reputation through trade press and local business magazines and things like that. So I suppose it's not about generating a new cost for you. It's about taking that investment you're currently putting in those, channels over here, maybe traditional channels, and just moving even a proportion of it digital. I think some of the stuff we've done, and one point I wanted to make was that we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds here. I think the first proof of concept we ran with Esh Construction, I think it was about 5K, and we ran it on LinkedIn. We picked a really targeted set of suppliers and potential customers they wanted to engage with. I think in particular, there was a specific tender in Yorkshire. We knew who the tender team were. It was East Riding Council, and we just targeted their key senior procurement team with really positive Esh Construction PR and messages. And lo and behold, Esh won that contract, and then that led to where we took them from there. So I think that was like a $5,000 trial. So we're not sitting here saying this is a £500,000 investment. Everyone on the call today could run this for probably less than they're probably currently spending on the marketing budgets as a trial and a proof of concept to learn before you can then scale it up. I don't know, Andy or David, I don't know if you want to kind of jump in on some of that.
I think I'll quickly come in. I think, the idea of, kind of being there and being present and driving that reputation and is really, really important. But in terms of being active, and as Brett said there, around why should we be doing digital and what are the benefits of moving away from digital, it's that idea of measurement and data and being able to be extremely targeted with your efforts to understand what return you then get back from it. As Brett said there, you can target, a very specific location around a very specific kind of work, and you can actually then, the data you then get back. And that was what really worked with the Esh guys, Brett, was when we said, these people, you want to engage with them. Not only can we put you in front of them, but we can guarantee that you've been in front of them. We didn't just put them in a bit of local press or use some more of the traditional methods and hope. It's much more kind of targeted, and that is a real benefit when we're going after and trying to, even as, larger organizations who want to grow in a very specific way with a very specific customer base. This is where digital can help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think David, on LinkedIn in particular, that's worth David touching on. I suppose not everyone's aware of the targeting capabilities. If you want to work with, if you want to put your ads in front of CEOs or head of procurement for construction businesses that are over 200 staff within so many miles of this postcode, we can get to that level. You can get to the universities these people studied at and target them through that specifically. If you're looking for quantity surveyors or specifiers or architects where you want to get on the next tender list, we can target every architect within the Northeast to make sure if you're a construction firm, they're thinking about you if they're thinking about running these projects. So you can be super, super hyper targeted with kind of where you go. And again, David, your team kind of cover a majority of that.
Yeah, and I think going back to Caroline's point, and sort of just to round this sort of question up, is really sort of why digital. I guess for all the reasons that Brett mentioned, the level of targeting capability out there now through paid advertising is absolutely fantastic. But what I would be saying is it's always been a case, marketing of you want to be where your users and your audience is, operating. And the reality is we've seen particularly over the last 18 months, we've all shifted to being more online than ever. The amount of volume of time being spent online has increased. The amount of time engagement on social networks, the differences in social networks, etc., has increased substantially. So from my perspective, it's like you've got to be playing in the right field. And the right field right now is very much digital. And I think that combined with the targeting capabilities that you see in platform, whether you're, Brett's brother's business starting out, or whether you're a massive organisation like I say, Modwin's, a Mobile, Mini, or an Esh, is the reality is you can run hyper-targeted campaigns based on attracting that audience that are active, are engaging, because again, you can target based on how many people, the time that they've spent engaging. You can then run retargeting campaigns, so you can even run campaigns based on people who've liked previous content or people who've engaged in previous content. So the opportunity is substantial, and the targeting mixed with changing consumer behaviours would definitely be the drivers for me.
Definitely. I was going to say, go on, Caroline.
Yeah, if I could just sort of jump in there. I've got a question from Malcolm, who's one of our Northern Counties members, a very successful building company, award winners. I've had a few chats with Malcolm recently about digital presence. We've spoke about just having a Facebook presence even. They do have a website, and like I said, they've got some amazing content from some of the projects they've worked on the past few years. But Malcolm's question there is digital instantly out of date? There are micro businesses, and how can they afford to invest? I know that, Brett, you sort of covered that already with saying just, a few thousand can start you off on the right path. And then the management of some social platforms, it is relatively easy. It's not that time consuming, and it's not that expensive to actually manage your socials. Your website may be more expensive. You need a bit more expertise in there, but just to sort of cover that question for Malcolm.
Yeah, if I could quickly jump in before the guys, I think exactly sort of what I said earlier. My brother is targeting specific postcodes within the Northeast, with a very, very simple messaging, which is, and I suppose from Malcolm's point, you can be, it does, digital does move very quickly, but I think you can be agile with that. So, you can be running a very simple ad within a matter of hours, targeting a very, specific community or types of customer or business. And if you need to evolve that ad, it's very, digital Google ads, it's sort of WYSIWYG. Most people can go in and change kind of text and ads and targeting. This is really straightforward thing to do if you want to do it at a simple level. So I wouldn't be worried about kind of it evolving and needing a big investment in that suddenly becomes out of date, because you can kind of evolve with it. I mean, Paul, you guys are doing a lot within the kind of social community space.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of this conversation is dependent on the scale of your business and what point you're at. I know loads of architects that very successfully survive off the back of an Instagram page. It can be brilliant. You're not having to evolve. Instagram evolves and it takes your content with it. If you're trying to show projects that you've completed, work in progress, that kind of thing, that can be brilliant. I think it's just as you start scaling up, and it's back to the point that Dan was making, that if you can start transforming bits of your business like workflow, ordering, keeping track on things, recruitment, that's when having just a social presence will let you down, and then you start needing to go more into websites. But there's cost-effective ways of building websites. You don't need to start from day one with the full, totally digital, complete business. And and often the work that we do will take people on that journey. You start somewhere and then you evolve. But certainly, if you're smaller, don't be put off by thinking that things change, because I think the important bit is start, learn. See what results you're getting back, start getting some data, understand who is talking to you through these channels, and before you know it, you're starting to make a case for yourself as an owner, or for the other people in your business to say, actually, we could do with spending a bit more money on this.
Paul, I think that leads really nicely to another question that's came in from Tricia here around, for SMEs, how do you balance engaging digitally versus too much engagement, whereby marketing resources are often limited or none, i.e. another cap or someone in the company tends to wear. So, and I think it is a really interesting one, because it's like, actually, this is so overwhelming. There's so much that we can be getting at. Where would we start? Because there's nobody kind of set to do it. But you kind of answered that just there in the sense of start with something small, test, learn, and then make a case for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it often does fall to someone in the business to look after social. But, wait till those leads start coming in, wait till you start winning projects off the back of it. And, you'll start going like, actually, this person's really important in our business. We talk a lot about, it's called community management when in the kind of buzzword in marketing circles, but how you talk back to, how do you talk to people that are coming and talking to you on your Facebook page, your Instagram page? And actually, that is as relevant for a relatively small building firm that's local to some of the really big brands that we work with. A conversation's a conversation. As soon as it happens in public, that's part of your reputation. How you deal with that, how you respond to the questions, that is how you start building all of this. And that's why it can add such good value. And it's free to create an Instagram account. It's free to create a Facebook account. Yeah, you're going to have someone looking after it. But start, learn, see the impact. And then you can take all of that into your own website and, apps and, the whole digital future.
And I think what we forget is that, we use Facebook. Some of my members who are, how shall I say, more senior might say, but I don't use Facebook. I say, yeah, you do. You're on there with your grandkids. You're on there with your family. It's the same for business as it is for personal. Yeah, it's your brand, but don't be frightened of it. You need to use it. It's a business tool. And it's a very cost-effective business tool. And to just decide that you're not going to use these platforms, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And if you really are that fearful of it, engage somebody like yourselves to set off with a strategy, work with you guys for a few months, 6 months, 12 months, and learn that way. There's ways around getting started with that, but it's too valuable as a business tool, I think, to not use.
Absolutely, Caroline. And I think that's it. We've done a lot of kind of like upskilling and insourcing, where we've worked with a business that said, look, we want to bring this in-house. We can't afford this forever, but we want you to come in and set us up, build the platforms, train our team, whether that's an existing marketing team or a new junior, graduates, people like this that want to bring into the business, and give them the tools to kind of, self-develop that and manage the channel, and then, possibly come in once a year or once every 6 months and give them some new ideas and an audit. So it's not about, like Paul says, having to do the full, the full singing, all dancing. There's ways and means to engage and learn knowledge. And like David said, we run masterclasses every Tuesday, which are about all the basics, the Facebook and Instagram and Google Analytics and SEO. So there's tons of resource out there free for people to just come along, learn about it. And like you say, just test it, try it, have a go. If you're not competing in these spaces, your competitors definitely will be, and effectively eating your dinner, and that's what you've got to remember about those businesses that are extinct, because they also kind of turned away from digital and new channels, and you just don't be one of those.
I think as well, Brett, we spoke very much around kind of using digital, about acquiring customers or whatever. But what Dan said at the beginning of, like, it depends what you're trying to achieve, because there'll be different parts of digital you'll use. If it is about, growth, new customers, well, yeah, social, fantastic. But if it's around, reputation and building a reputation or shifting the mindset or whatever, then you then invest in your website. And so I think it's about just taking a step back before and just saying, what are we trying to achieve here? And what parts of this digital kind of landscape do I need? And then setting about business.
Absolutely. I think on that note, Caroline, if we don't have any other questions, I think we're probably at time for everybody. Thanks again from myself on behalf of Mediaworks and the speakers. As Jason pointed out earlier, we are offering a free audit for anybody and a free consultation for any attendees today. Who's interested to just find out more about the opportunities or potential threats that are out there. So please do take up that free offer, and hopefully, worst case, it'll give you something you didn't know beforehand and something you can action yourself if you don't want to work with someone like Mediaworks moving forward. Thanks to Caroline for having us along and letting us support the membership.
Thanks, guys. Really useful.
Cheers. Thanks guys.
Everybody.
See ya.
Yeah.